Hey, good afternoon, everybody. Welcome to the Del Norte County Solid Waste Management Authority meeting on this beautiful afternoon on February 26th. We're going to call the meeting to order with a roll call.
Commissioner Neffa?
Here.
Commissioner Inscore?
Here.
Commissioner Howard?
Here.
Commissioner Greeno?
Here.
Chair Cowan?
Here. Okay, with that, Vice Chair Greeno, will you lead us, please?
Absolutely. Ready, salute. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Great. At this time, we'll take up public comment. Any member of the public may address the Solid Waste Management Authority on any matter on or off the agenda. Is there any public comment? Seeing none, we'll go on to the consent agenda.
Chair Cowan, I'd like to make a small modification on the consent agenda. The director's vacation request is slated for 29 May through 12 June. I'd like to change that to 25 May to 11 June and 6 through 14 July.
Okay, does anybody have a problem with that? We all good with that? So then on the consent agenda, we have item 1.1, they approve the minutes from the special session on Wednesday, January 23rd. 1.2, approve the director's vacation with the changes. The request is from May 25 through June 11th and 6 through the 14th of July. And then 1.3, payment of claim number 8383 in the amount of $10,500 for invoice 2349 and the completion of the audit services for the fiscal year 2017 and 2018.
Make a motion to approve consent with noted change.
Okay, awesome. I have a motion and a second. Here, can you please pull the vote?
Commissioner Neffa?
Yes.
Commissioner Howard? Commissioner Greeno?
Yes.
Commissioner Inscore?
Yes.
Chair Cowan?
Yes. Perfect. Okay, I'm going to go ahead and jump out of order and go over to item 6.4 since our
Janet Gilbert is here.
Ms. Gilbert, if you want to come up, and we're going to have a discussion, possible action regarding the development of the Tansy Games. Do you want to join us at the podium?
So included in your agenda packet on item 6.4 is essentially a short sheet describing the rules that Janet's using to do outreach and explain the Tansy Games, trying to solicit support from other members of the community.
How are you this afternoon?
A little damp.
That's okay. We need the rain, I heard. Why don't you go ahead and tell us about the Tansy Games?
I'll give you an update.
Okay.
I'm going to meet with the Fair Board in 2 days at their meeting to talk about cooperation and possibly having a booth at the fair to help publicize. I've spoken with the Resource Conservation District Secretary, and she's very excited about the concept and will be a really, really good outreach person for the Smith River area and a lot of the ranches. So I'll be meeting with the Conservation District on their next meeting on March 20th. The Friends of Del Norte Conservation Council has agreed to partner with the games. They are a 501c3, so that would open us up to being able to accept donations. And I'm beginning to talk to potential, I'm starting like with the feed stores. People are actively into agriculture, passing out the letter of introduction and my card and making appointments to come back and speak with them. So I've spoken several times with the Ag Department, Justin Riggs, and he's very excited and would like to offer as much as he can, which doesn't have a big budget because it's not a type A weed, but he's very excited about the idea. I have one mock-up poster just to show you. It would obviously go onto a computer and look much nicer. Friends Don't Let Friends Eat Tansy, play the Tansy games. So something kind of agricultural and colorful. I've got several other ideas that I don't have them mocked up for you. Some of them are, maybe you wouldn't like them. Like one was, several of them will just be a picture of tansy, the plant, and then have something statement over it. Something like wanted, dead, or uprooted, agricultural enemy number 1, tansy ragwort. One maybe only us old timers would recognize. I am curious, tansy. It would just be a picture of this yellow flowered plant and then play the games this summer. So that would be a takeoff of that popular book a long time ago. So I'm dating myself here. I just have several ideas. I have one that I think maybe would be a takeoff on Star Wars, and so it would, let's see, I wrote it down if you want. It would take, I'm going to have to get a friend who knows computers to make all these cards. It would be a takeoff on this beginning of Star Wars, and so it would be on slanted, like a scrolling paper, and it'd start off in very, very small print. And a long time ago in a rural county far, far away, an invasive plant, tansy ragwort, established itself. Now rebel forces, that's all of us, are amassing to defeat the evil plant. We must use the ultimate weapons, shovels, I know, they're not glamorous, but they work, to defeat the enemy and retake and restore the county. And then in big print, play the tansy games. And so
Commissioner Greenow is a big Star Wars fan. You would like that one, right?
I think it's a good start, for sure.
I'm just trying to have a bunch of different ideas for posters that would appeal to different age groups and the possibilities of having fun while you're actually doing work and accomplishing something.
Sounds good.
So that's where I am, and then you have the rules that we're working on, and before I start distributing those, I would need to finalize a couple of things and you guys to all agree.
Yep.
So that's my update.
Well, thank you. Do you guys have any questions from the board up here? Questions at all? Then we're looking for possible action regarding the development on it.
I think we can
Just
look
go
at
over
it as
those.
consensus support for the rules
Yeah.
and the things that are being developed so far.
Yeah,
Yeah.
All good? All right.
Absolutely.
thank you.
Thank you. Okay, it's going to bring us to the treasurer's report.
Excuse me, we'll start off with the director's report, if we might, on 2.1. Summarizing some of the things that aren't otherwise appearing in the agenda. First of all, I'd like to really appreciate Kira Seymour's work with some of the other authority staff to cut back the overgrown vegetation and to restore the landfill. There are areas of erosion. It's been a lot of extra work, and we haven't had the Alder Camp crews available because of the fires and a variety of other things. And so, unfortunately, we had several months of running violations because we were behind in addressing these erosion and vegetation control issues. So I'm very happy that all those issues have been addressed, and we expect those violations to not appear in the next inspection report. Attached to the director's report is an open invitation by Recology Del Norte for an open house they're having at their processing facility down in Humboldt on Sunday, March 17th from 10 a.m. until noon. So all of you are welcome, and we might coordinate transport if there's more than one person who's interested. Also attached to this agenda is an email attached to this report is an email from Cal Recycle reminding us that it is time for our 5-year review of the source reduction recycling element, the Regional Agency Integrated Waste Management Plan, which is essentially the series of documents that describe how we plan all of our recycling, composting, reuse programs. And so this gets reviewed every 5 years, in part with a citizens advisory group called the Local Task Force. And since at this point there's only one current member of the local task force, we'll have to solicit applications and appoint those volunteers by the city and the county. So I'll be working with the city and county to follow through on those obligations. Also, we are updating our software, our scale management software, the primary software we use at the Del Norte County Transfer Station for all of our customers. We hoped that we were going live on that tomorrow, but at this point it looks like our target date is the middle of March. So we're looking at March 14th for that. We made Jeffrey Matheson a permanent member of the authority staff. We're happy about that. And we did open a recruitment for another refuse site attendant because we do need additional staff coming this summer. So with that, that concludes Director's report. I'd be happy to answer any questions at this point on that.
Any questions, Commissioners? Mr. Ward?
Okay. Moving on to our financial reports. Generally, Kathy is doing an excellent job keeping up on our outstanding balances. You can see that in our AR. We have $1,046,962 in the bank, plus the $198,177. This is the low cash flow period of the year. You can see that under claims approved by Director on item 2.3, once again, our biggest expenses are the payment to Hambro WSG for their good services at the Del Norte County Transfer Station, and the second payment related to the Del Norte County Transfer Station construction loan. Again, continuing on looking at our finances, on the last page, the item 2.5, comparing our authority revenues. Like I said, this is the time when our cash flow is the weakest, and we are still 10,771 ahead of budget for our transfer station revenues, and we're 21,822 ahead of budget on our franchise fees. So with that, that's the conclusion of the financial reports. I'd be happy to answer any questions.
I have a question.
Yes.
So under the AR aging summary, I think it's great that we go for collections, you know, when someone's late, like, 90 days and whatever. But I question about the one that says collections on the bottom of page 19, because it's only for $10.10. So it seems like, the efforts to go into something like that are going to cost more than $10.10.
I don't think we have a threshold, so if something is overdue and they haven't paid it, there isn't anything in writing that I know of that says, if it's under 20 bucks, we'll just let it go.
Why don't you just say what you said to me?
Given the business associated with it, before we go to collections, I think a phone call would be a more appropriate and better use of staff resources, and I'd be happy to make a phone call if that would be helpful.
I'm confident we do letters and phone calls. We really try to contact everybody. So this is not done in isolation. But sometimes some of these accounts end up having, folks who are supposed to be paying their bills, and you're talking to one person on behalf of another. But I will look into that, sir, to make sure that I have some kind of answer for you.
And then, personally, when you said the number of $20, to me that sounds reasonable, either 20 or 25 or something like that. Mm-hmm. Because, we have to take in consideration, employee time pursuing this, and, maybe it might have to be a little higher, but at least some kind of a smaller threshold in the short term.
No, agreed. Okay, any other comments regarding their questions?
The other thing that I believe on that particular account, some of those are late charges. So part of the challenge with that is the late charges, if people choose not to pay them, then the late charges still stay there. And if you allow people to just not pay their late charges, then the late charges don't have a lot of meaning. But I will inquire further about that.
Okay, moving on. Item number 3, landfill post-closure.
There are some very thick items under item 3, and I will try to move through them quickly for everybody's benefit. The first is the fairly thick documents regarding the final post-closure maintenance plan update and the non-water corrective action plan and related cost estimates from the Crescent City landfill. Those were based on documents that were prepared by EBA Associates, but they were prepared by Jim Barnes, who's the county engineer. And my understanding is those have now been submitted to the local agency and local enforcement agent for Cal Recycle. So those should be in process. The biggest difference that makes to us is there was an increase in the cost estimates for post-closure maintenance, which makes a difference in terms of how the numerical assessment of the liability associated with the landfill. However, the basics of that liability obligation don't change, which is we will continue to maintain and take care of the landfill in a post-closure period. If there's any truly unaffordable disaster, we've already pledged that the revenues to address that disaster would come from the Delmar County Transfer Station. So regardless of the actual dollar amounts involved, that commitment remains the same. So this may change the financial picture in terms of the assessed liability, but in terms of our responsibilities, nothing changes. I'd be happy to answer any questions with regards to those reports.
Mr. Ward, would you anticipate that change, I mean, we're talking about when you extrapolate that over a 20-year span of time, a significant amount of money of showing, you know, a post liability. Would you anticipate that could affect us if we were looking at financing? Where are some areas that we need to be aware that this new number could in fact be at least an issue?
I think that's exactly it. Were we to seek financing for a development project, that would affect the overall assessment of the fiscal health of the agency, and it could affect our interest rates. That's just about the only way that I can see it immediately affecting us. The other way, and the reason why this is required under law to make these cost estimates, were this functionally this agency to go into default and not be able to fulfill these obligations, the reason why Cal Recycle requires these cost estimates is that gives Cal Recycle an estimate about what the financial requirements they have to maintain the facility. So that's really how it's used.
Any concern that showing an increased liability requirement for maintenance and taking care of this over this period of time gives any credence to the state identifying that our permit maybe doesn't need to be as low? If they're saying it's costing 50% more to manage this liability going forward for the next 20 years, that was the first thing that concerned me. The two things that concerned me obviously was future finance, debt financing, and then the state saying, well, if you're saying it's going to cost you even more to take care of, then maybe your permit wasn't so far out of line before we reduced it.
I hear your concern. However, there are two separate agencies addressing two separate issues. So the Regional Water Quality Control Board, which sets the threat and complexity rating, which we've appealed and
Sure.
gotten that reduced, is a different agency than Cal Recycle, and these are different assessments.
And that number is factored in here, the $30,000 that the
That's
permit is in.
that's correct.
That's part of the 97,000.
That's
Okay.
correct.
All right, thank you. Appreciate that.
Is it clear as mud?
We're clear as something, yes.
Any other questions? Okay. moving
Okay.
on.
Thank you.
Then item 3.2 are two fairly technical reports. We were required under the Regional Water Quality Control Board Order 9790 to submit semi-annual monitoring reports at the Crescent City landfill. And this is the time in which we summarize the water quality monitoring data and the gas monitoring data. It needs to be prepared by an engineer, so we've hired Lawrence and Associates to do that on a regular basis. These reports aren't really showing anything new, but they're consistent. Bottom line is the landfill is impacting the groundwater. The impacts are not huge, but they're certainly detectable and measurable. And so we're continuing to monitor the landfill. Other aspects of these reports also discuss the E4 pair of wells that are closest to the residential property, and the Regional Water Quality Control Board's expressed interest in us monitoring residential wells. I will continue that discussion on the next item, but those are addressed within these reports. So these reports are already submitted, but if the board has any additional issues to discuss regarding these, I'd be happy to do that.
Any questions, gentlemen? Okay.
Just one.
You're on.
Was there any indication this year, I know we talked about it 2 years ago, of the need to drill an additional well?
And on the next item, I have something to say about that.
Okay, I'm sorry. Thank you. That's it.
Okay, we'll move on to
So next item, I have a brief PowerPoint. As we were meeting with Dominic Mello and folks from Pacific Power and State Parks and talking about the challenges of trying to both remove the items that had been illegally dumped at the landfill and to try to control vehicle access to the property. In the process of doing this, I asked Eric Lockstead from the county to give us to reaffirm some of the property line boundaries. And so we recently visited that area, so I'd like to show you some of the pictures of this area of the landfill property. Oh, here I've got the clicker. Okay, so this is near the front of the gate. You may have seen the article in the Triplicate today highlighting this very same trailer. This is at the gate of the landfill on the road, and then that boat is on landfill property, again, having just been dumped. In the background of that boat, you see a pile of trash, and a week earlier there was another vehicle there, again, on landfill property. As we were walking back at the property, we noticed this recently constructed rough-hewn pole barn, and there were also areas of tree poaching adjacent to the property. So part of our issue is that these are immediately adjacent to the landfill property, and obviously areas of concern, and no clear limits about when they're next to the property line and when they're over the property line. And so here's an aerial survey. North is to the right, because that's easier for orientation. So you can see Old Mill Road is on the far right there. Heights Access Road that leads into the landfill is in the upper right. So the property area that we walked, where you saw the boat, was pretty much right about where it says Old Mill Road, or where you see the gray pile of concrete there. And the trailer, the picture is just off to the right of this picture. But one of the things that was discovered as we looked at these property boundaries is the residential water well that is closest to the landfill is on the landfill property, so that it's actually on our property. And so we, in the coming weeks, will be sending a letter to the resident and the property owner, making it very clear that we intend to sample that well when and how we want to sample that well, because it's on our property. Thanks. And then we'll continue to pursue things. But this does highlight one of the issues that was being discussed when we were looking at how to prohibit vehicular access. And State Parks folks basically said, well, if there was an ordinance adopted that had elevated penalties for trespass and dumping, we would be happy to enforce that. And since it's not really practical to fence around the property or to place rocks everywhere where a person might drive, what we thought is that placing signs all around the property boundaries where people are regularly accessing might be a good and cost-effective way, combined with camera surveillance, to stop some of this ongoing activity. So that is staff's recommendation, that the board directs staff to work with legal counsel, the county code enforcement officer, and others as needed to draft an authority ordinance for elevated penalties to deter illegal dumping, vehicular trespass, and property damage on authority-managed properties, including the Crescent City landfill, the Klamath transfer station, the Gasky transfer station, community drop-off recycling locations, and possibly including the area around street-side trash and recycling bins. We would need to explore to make sure that this is okay with the board, that this is something you want us to pursue, of course, first and foremost, and second of all, jumping through all the hoops of crafting this so that it actually worked to address all of those areas. So introducing this concept, I haven't developed it very far, but I have looked at the current, for the board's information, under current California Penal Code. Trespassing, it has a minimum fine of $100, and illegal dumping is, yes, first instance of residential illegal dumping is $250 up to $1,000, and second, and then increasing penalties for repeated offenses. And if you're dumping commercial quantities, it's a minimum fine of $1,000 and up to $3,000. So that's what's currently on the books, and we would explore possibly elevated penalties enforced on authority properties.
I'm looking at this property line, it looks like it's going right through the neighbor's stuff.
It does, doesn't it?
Right through that road, right through all the garbage. So is it just been a matter of because there are no boundaries that are visible, that they have just kind of overflowed into our property?
That's a good assessment.
Okay, and then from point, where it says FD, I'm trying to, you got 1 dot, 2 dots.
Yeah, those red dots are actually markers in
Okay.
in the ground.
So on those markers, so you found markers, that's interesting. What's that distance right there?
But I don't know. For instance, I'd say between, for instance, the 2 dots on the right, it's about 100 feet.
This way. So
Yeah.
going all the way back, it's got to be longer than 100
It's
feet.
quite a bit longer, yes.
Okay, so probably like 300 or 400 feet. Okay. So how are you, I've been to that property.
Uh-huh.
I know that property, believe it or not.
Right.
And, because it's right next to Kinnikins. And, I mean, how are you going to address that? It's a mess. How are you going to go in there and say, you need to remove your stuff? Is Dominic helping you?
Dominic
are you
is,
gonna put up
we are
something?
slowly working on this property. There's a variety of issues, but we're working on several fronts concurrently. As we've discussed, we have the water well sampling issue with respect to the Regional Water Quality Control Board. We have the relationship with the neighbor themselves, because they are actually making steps in the right direction. They've recently installed a gate at where people had been accessing their property, so we're delighted to see that. And mostly we want to address the issues. We're not trying to make enemies of our neighbors.
Yeah, no, I just,
But to be clear, this is just direction to start developing the ordinance. There's nothing that's actually being approved. The draft ordinance would be brought back to the board for consideration, and then in order for this to actually be enacted, it would, if this board adopted it, it would also have to be separately approved by the city and the county.
do I see willingness from this board to
Yes.
direct the director?
I say yes.
Okay.
What kind of ordinance are you considering around drop-off bins? I mean, like the residential drop-off bins?
Right. Basically, I'd be considering no dumping. The same kind of thing, if you dump and we can find out who you are, that this is an administrative citation ordinance that's enforceable.
Okay, we're not talking about when there's high winds and the garbage cans get blown over or whatever?
No, no.
Okay.
We're talking specifically about the community recycling bins that have been dumping targets.
Okay, absolutely.
Okay. Great.
And it's a tangible thing that we could do to try to reduce that issue.
I like that. Okay, I think you have direction.
Okay, thank you for that. And we can drop that from there. Okay, shall we move on?
Yes, move on to item 4.1, discussion of possible action regarding a letter.
Right. 4.1, this is a standard thing we do every year. Essentially, Recology has to officially ask for us to review and adjust the rates based on CPI. As you recall, they've already been approved to have an extra increase to address the additional cost to process recyclables, but that would be in addition to the CPI. So this is just the official request. The draft rates will come back to the authority board for review and approval. So this is already in our agreement. The board doesn't have any special direction, just receive and file.
So this is just FYI.
Yep.
Great.
5.1 is also an FYI. However, included in there is the following paragraph. This is from Hambro WSG regarding the transfer station operations agreement. Rogue Compost recently informed us that an increase in green waste would be necessary in the future due to market conditions affecting the compost industry. Yesterday, we received notification that commencing July 1, 2019, the green waste material delivered to Rogue Compost will increase $10 per ton, increasing July 1, 2020 to $15 per ton and July 1, 2021 to $20 a ton. While they don't explicitly request an adjustment to the rate to address these costs, I presume that's why they included the information. So I've started correspondence with Hambros to try to gather the information for the board's review.
Do you want to talk about it, or? Please, enlighten us.
Well, I don't think anybody is surprised that the cost of composting is going up. I had a lengthy discussion with Rogue Compost, the division of Dry Creek Landfill. He had planned on being here today, but he thought the weather was bad, and I think maybe the weather was bad. He wasn't afraid of getting here, he was afraid of getting home. So he stayed in Grants Pass. But they're running into a real serious problem. They've had to spend over $1 million upgrading their composting area, the green waste. Now they're dealing with stormwater problems. They have continued to expand it. They're competing, their compost is now competing with, there's Portland compost in Jackson County now. Compost out of, green waste out of Portland is going to Corvallis, where it's processed into compost, where it's being hauled to even southern Oregon to find a market, which has reduced the price of the goods there in southern Oregon. So all the ends of the compost, and as all other recyclables, as we get more and more product and the price goes down, and the costs, of course, don't go down correspondingly. At Hambro, we're still looking at alternatives. We hear that Blue Lake Power may come back online and burn some. A lot of people aren't betting on that. I don't think we've been paid for the last bill from 2 years ago. So it's not one we can count on, but we're hopeful. Hambro is also looking at doing something with biomass. So maybe in the future we could be processing some of that stuff here. Hambro's tried it over and over. From its inception, things have changed. When Hambro went into this, the idea was to bring the compost over to the Hambro properties where it sat. Hambro had a grinder at one time. That didn't prove to be economically feasible. They went to a process where they were stacking it up for years and years, and according to Cal Recycle, it's only supposed to be there 6 months. So we had some problems with that, and cost us a large sum of money to get in compliance with Cal Recycle several years ago. But we did the last event, and we still have a large amount of compost on site, and it will be available this spring. Enhanced Dirty Fines. If any of you guys are gardeners, you know the high quality of the Hambro's Enhanced Dirty Fines. We're enhancing it with the Eco-Nutrients fish product. That's our plug for the day. The problem is we still can't make money at it. Even when we're charging at very high cost, it's great compost. Again, there's more competition. If you drive from here to Eugene, you'll see composting projects going on all over. It's tough. So we appreciate the fact that Dry Creek has given us 2 years to come up to a point where they think they'll be able to cover costs. So their idea was, well, it's costing us $20, but we're going to incrementally increase it over the next 2 or 3 years. So we appreciate that, and we'll be coming up with more information as we research the area to see if there are some other places that we can take it. Again, we haven't had any success processing it here and being competitive with anyone. So we're looking at Humboldt County, we're looking in the Valley. So far, we haven't found it. So stand by, we'll try to come up with some good documentation to prove we've got a little problem.
Great, thank you.
I do have
Any
one
questions?
question. How much tonnage are you shipping a month?
A month, I think it was 1,800 tons last year, or 1,733, something like that.
Total
So
for the year?
Pardon?
Total for the year?
Yeah, for the whole year.
Okay.
So it's not a lot. And that's another problem, so you can't make that capital investment to process that small amount. So, still looking for alternatives, though. We've got some ideas.
Any other questions? No? Great, thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, you want to move on to item 5.2?
5.2 is the proposals that we received to do the work to help us select and assess potential sites for a northern transfer station. Staff are recommending that we sign an agreement with Stillwater Sciences. They were the highest scoring proposal, and they were also the lowest price. So the amount is $29,767. It's important to recognize that the scope is crafted so that we are expecting they would continue to do more work past that point. So that probably won't be the total amount that they get paid, because there is environmental work to be done after that point, and they'll provide, part of the scope is that they would provide us a price to do that work, though we're not required to accept that price. So staff recommendation is that we approve signatures on the contracts that you have before you with Stillwater Sciences. I'd be happy to answer any questions.
Move to approve.
Motion and second.
So,
Second?
no, I didn't second it. I did have a question.
Yeah, and I had a question.
Second it, and then we can
Now
go up.
that it's seconded, just so you're aware, I have had the pleasure in the past life of working quite closely with this consultant in Arcata. They are top-notch at performing their work. They have an incredible staff, including led by several PhDs. Haven't worked with them for about 5 years, but several of them I've met over the years, and they're still employed with Stillwater and doing a great job. So, great selection on this one.
Yeah, I was just asking in the set, when you mentioned that there would be some additional work, so, and you said that they wouldn't necessarily get that.
Right.
So does that mean that we'll go out to bid at that time also, or not?
If the price is not acceptable to the board, we would.
Okay, that's fine.
It would be for environmental review, and part of the reason why we put that as a separate cost is the nature of the environmental review will totally depend upon the site that gets selected. So whether you need a birds and bunnies expert, a frog expert, you know, it really depends on the site.
Okay.
Is there any public comment on item number 5.2? Okay, any more questions from the commission? Yes?
No, you answered my question, so thank you.
Birds and bunnies?
Yeah.
That's what he was,
So we have
That's
a
what he was looking
motion, motion and a second. Could you please pull the vote?
Commissioner Naffa?
Yes.
Commissioner Inscore?
yes.
Commissioner Howard?
Yes.
Commissioner Greeno?
Yes.
Chair Cowan?
Yes. Okay, great. So that brings us on to other general solid waste authority matters. 6.1, discussion possible action regarding resolution 2019-02, honoring Blake Enscore Services Chair of the Del Norte Solid Waste Management
Are you
Authority.
kidding me?
Yes, what I,
I bow to you, sir.
Who the
we
hell
never
would
put
have
this
put
kind
this
of
on the
junk on
meeting
the agenda when I was a chair. That had never made the agenda. I can guarantee you that.
It's not funny. He did a great job. We need to honor
Oh, wow.
him. We need to boost his ego, Chris.
Oh.
Like a ribbon?
Yes, as long as it's green. Sorry.
You did a
This is
great
way
job.
too-
Thank you for all your time, service, effort, all that goes with it. We do appreciate it. And Ted is making you this huge plaque out of all the stuff that Jeremy's bringing up from the recycling.
Very
center
good,
in Samoa.
good,
Samoa.
yes.
Are we voting on this?
Repurposing somebody else's trash, I like it,
Perfect. We're all about repurposing.
yeah. Yeah, good,
Nice.
good. Wrap it in a pizza box.
I was thinking the diapers. Yeah, we want to make sure we have some diapers in
Yes,
there.
I'm just glad we're not still in the days where the chair had to go out and inspect that stuff.
Me too.
Yeah, I bet you are.
Moving
Thank
on-
you.
You're welcome. Moving on to item 6.2, discussion and possible
Uh,
action. What?
May I presume that that was passed by unanimous vote?
Do we
Yeah.
need to take it? Do you want to vote on it?
It's got an ayes, yeah, it's a resolution.
It's
You don't have to,
okay.
it doesn't
Do
have to be
I
pulled.
find consensus, is all those in favor, of recognizing?
Yes,
Mr.
I am.
No.
Come on, Howard. Give it up. I want to hear an aye out of you.
If it's a resolution, we need a motion.
Oh, jeez.
I'll make the motion.
Thank you,
Okay.
Commissioner Napa. Do I have a second?
I'll second it.
A motion and a second. Do you guys want to chime in? Any public comment?
Yeah, public comment. He's getting public comment.
Can you please pull the vote?
Commissioner Neffa,
Yes.
Commissioner Howard, Commissioner Greeno,
Yes.
Commissioner Inscore,
Yes.
Chair Cohen.
Absolutely.
Thank you. It's like we got nothing else to do.
There we go. You'll be honoring me next year, and I expect a party.
I can assure you there'll be some recognition.
So now can we move on to item number 6.2?
We could have a party as long as Jeremy's the caterer.
Item 6.2 is the work plan. And I just include this because you all have been here for some time, and I certainly appreciate the continuity. You've seen this before. But I have highlighted the items that I think will need special attention during fiscal year 1920. So first of all, of course, is working on the Northern Transfer Station. We'll have constituent of concern monitoring, which is essentially a more comprehensive monitoring of the Crescent City landfill. We have to do that every 5 years, so that will come up this summer. We will be negotiating with Recology, working on trying to reduce the proportion of non-recyclable trash, including, for instance, the ordinance that you just directed staff to work on. We will be working with the county and the city to flesh out the solid waste task force and work with them to do the 5-year review of our regional agency integrated waste management plan. And we'll be helping Janet Gilbert and Intelligence Stewards with the Tansy Games. We'll be working with the county code enforcement officer to develop an ordinance addressing authority properties and legal counsel. And we will be working on updating the memorandum of understanding with the authority employees, and that expires in June this year. So those are some of the additional things that we'll be focused on.
Going back to your little, I forgot your little group that you need to.
Task force, yes.
The task force.
The task force, yes.
The little group. Do you have a timeline, timeframe?
Yes, I'll be putting items on, well, I will be requesting to be placed on the agenda for the city and the county in the coming month, so that the city and county can make those appointments. And the way it works is the city makes their appointments, the county makes their appointments, and then they're ratified by the other party.
So they don't come here first?
No.
Okay.
These are advisory body, this is an advisory body appointed by the city and the county, but they are advisory to this agency and to the CalRecycle. And essentially the concept is this, that when developing the community-wide recycling program, we need to engage the people who are most involved with that. So the concept of the local task force is to involve, say, the garbage hauler, the transfer station operations contractor, the local recycler, to start talking about what would make recycling work in our community. Similarly, over the years, we've had members, representatives from the city council. We've had folks who are owners of apartments in apartment complexes who wanted residential recycling in apartment complexes. Pretty much people who are interested in trying to make recycling work, and so they offer their opinions about how well we're doing, and then essentially CalRecycle considers those opinions as they review our progress.
Excellent. And how many people are you looking from each?
An excellent question, and I'm going to say about 6, but I have to look it up.
That's a lot. It's a big-
It
not
may
a
be,
little
it may be
task force.
fewer.
Okay, so you'll
It's not
change it to that.
it's not a
That's
small
total,
task
not-
force.
That's not for me.
But I will be
That's
presenting
okay.
this information as we've done it before to the city and the
So my
county.
question, let me reemphasize that. How many are you asking from each city and county? 6 from each or 3 each?
No, it's more like 6, but I have to look that up. I'm sorry, I don't
It's
know
all right.
off the top of my
We'll
head.
wait on that one. Did you have something?
That was my
Commissioner?
question.
Oh, okay. See, great minds think alike.
It's somewhere between 5 and 10, and it's set forth in state law, how many
Okay.
each appoints, and
Well, we
So we'll
look
have to
forward
look
to
that up
seeing
and
it come to us.
That information will be before the city and the county before they're asked to make the appointments.
Okay, excellent. Thank you. Any other questions regarding any of these items coming up for next year? They all look good? Nobody wants to add any more work to these guys? Any burning desires? Okay.
I think the majority of the commission's priorities are listed in that current work plan, so
Absolutely.
Yeah.
I'm all for it.
Yeah, it looks good. Great. So you don't need any action from us on this?
No, consensus
FYI?
direction is fine.
Yeah, okay. And so we're moving on to item 6.3, discussion possible action regarding guiding principles for legislative advocacy.
So the whole idea of this is that laws move through the legislative process at a very rapid clip. Oftentimes, things change dramatically within a single week. So the time to engage, to express the desires of this board in the legislative process sometimes can be a very timely thing. But if we don't, by having guiding principles for legislative advocacy, this is what was recommended, say, by the Regional Council of Rural Counties, the ESJPA. This is what they do. Because you can't get together all of those rural county representatives to decide something in a timely manner to influence legislation. But by having these guiding principles, then when there's a proposed law that either violates or is entirely supported within the guiding principles, then at least we can engage in the advocacy that supports those principles. So that's the idea. But the thing I really want to emphasize is that whenever and however possible, staff understand that it is more appropriate to bring those kind of advocacy letters to the board so that the whole board gets a chance to review them before they're submitted. I understand that that is preferred. But sometimes, in order to continue engaging on issues that are of concern to the board, there may be times when we don't have time for the next meeting, to wait for the next meeting, and so we still want to engage in the conversation. We can draft a letter for the chair's signature and get that sent off and include that so that the board gets to see it in case there's any concerns following up. But that way, the interest of the board continues to be part of the discussion at the state level before laws and regulations are adopted. So staff recommend that, that the board consider and possibly revise and adopt the attached guiding principles for the purposes of legislative advocacy.
So, any questions regarding this? I know in the past you've had some kind of questions on legislation that has come up that you haven't had time to go through.
And I really think that it's this board's responsibility to put their input into those letters before they're sent, not after. I've been very clear, I don't support this. We're all elected officials put up here to put our cents in to whatever decision it is and to have oversight over this. I don't agree. I don't think we should do this.
So you're disagreeing with the guiding principles as far as this document, or?
I don't think that we should give our director the authority to send letters on our behalf, even with one member's approval. We as a body are supposed to approve our positions, not one person. So,
And I don't think this is affected to be all the time. This is that one chance that we have to, you know, put our position in that may not. I'm trying to think. I've been on this board 2 years, and I'm not sure that how many do you think that we've kind of lost out on being able to have a voice because of meeting timing? 1 or 2 maybe?
I can think of at least 4 instances in the last year.
In the last year.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, so it could happen. Commissioner Napa?
Yeah, so as far as the guiding principles, I think that's a great idea, because whatever direction we give you is helpful. The first thing I ever did working in city government was actually writing letters on behalf of the city of La Mirada, and we did a huge tracking process where we followed the legislation as it went through the committee process and as it went through each house on both state and federal level. And I know so often, we have to respond in a very quick manner, especially, you might find out like the day before, a couple of days before, that it's hitting the committee. So I think this direction at least helps guide us in that sense. And I would suggest that as soon as you draft the letter, before it's signed, that you send it to all of us, we could look at it and just give any kind of comment we want.
Our legal counsel is shaking her head, because what we can't do is we can't seek consensus from the board outside of a meeting.
You know, I'm not asking for consensus, I'm just saying at least we could get to see it.
Well, I think if a letter was sent, you know, once it's signed, a copy could be sent to you, but if you're asking to give feedback prior to it being sent, then that would be a violation of that would be creating a public meeting, or a meeting that's not public.
Right. And not just, I have one more comment? Sure. And not just that, the purpose of this meeting is so that the public has an opportunity to speak to whatever issue it is. And so if it's just one board member speaking to it, I mean, that's taking away the voice of the people as well, in my opinion.
And I guess I look at it differently. We are voicing our opinion with these guiding principles. No letter is going to be written that does not match the guiding principles that this authority has set down as being, these are our priorities, these are the stands that we're going to take, these are the things that we are for, these are the things that we are against, and these are the things that we want to make sure that we express our voice on. So if there's a place where we need to adjust our guiding principles or enhance them or change them, then that would be the appropriate thing to do. What it does is it expedites the process of not having the same conversation every time about a similar issue, because we've already established what our priorities are. We've already said these are our guiding principles. This is how we're going to respond to legislation. If there's a portion of the guiding principles that any of us disagree with, I think that would be the important thing, is that we look at these principles and say, hey, I think this principle doesn't go far enough to address this component, or I think it's an overreach and I feel like we shouldn't be weighing in on that. That would force those issues that might be more controversial to come back to the whole board and said, we're not going to write any letters on these things that we don't already have consensus on. But if we have consensus on the guiding principles, then I don't see any reason why we cannot agree to send a letter that matches the principles that we agree on.
Anybody else?
Well, I just want to reflect a little further on Blake's statements, because that's where I was going with my question to Commissioner Grinow, is that if we have the parameters, the guidelines for the director, and these are principles that we adopt as a board, that there's really no risk to this board about the direction that we're giving to the director in order to follow through on fast action items with the state. We know there's the necessary ability to do that. If the board were to come back and see a letter that went outside those guiding principles, we this board will be holding the director firmly accountable to going outside those actions. And just to make sure you're on record, I would certainly do that if we were to adopt these guiding principles tonight and you were to go outside the parameters that were set forth within that document. But that, to me, really allows for what I see, extremely quick action on the behalf of our director, on behalf of this commission, to speak to those items that need to be addressed immediately with the state. And right now, I know for a fact, this is a huge topic right now with CSAC, and there's some issues that are coming forward in this legislative season that we're going to need to be front and center on, and it can't wait for a meeting or whatever that we are not being pulled together on an emergency meeting when we could set something right now in place. But that's my opinion, and feel free to counter.
The thing is we've had a lot of pointed disagreements on this board, and I really feel that a lot of our letters have gone to votes. They have. I mean, it hasn't just been consensus. So that's just my concern.
I guess my question is there anything within the guiding principles document right now that you wouldn't disagree with or object to?
I don't support bans very readily, because I feel that bans should be the very last resort.
You said bins?
Bans.
Oh, bans, okay.
Like bans on products. That's infringing on the free market. Let's see.
Well, and that's sort of the point of this.
That's actually what that paragraph,
That's what
it
that
may not have
paragraph
been
actually says,
worded,
is
but
that bans is
this
last
kind of started
resort.
with the slogan of no ban without a plan. It's part of how we got into banning televisions and computer monitors from disposal. But part of what happened is CalRecycle said, issued a memo saying those are now toxic and they can't be disposed, and there was no recycling infrastructure whatsoever. And so part of the feeling among RCRC representatives and others, and that's what this is patterned off of, is that just banning something without having any transition or any plan is not good. And so that's more or less what this says, is that we need advanced statewide planning before anything gets banned. And that was the idea that was trying to be crafted there. We can always improve the wording.
Chair Cowan, I'd like to make a motion to approve this at this time. I don't know if there's a second on the table, at least for the discussion.
I will second that.
Okay, any public comment? Okay, seeing none, I've got a motion and a second. Can you please pull the vote?
Commissioner Neffa,
Yes.
Commissioner Inscore,
Yes.
Commissioner Howard,
Yes.
Commissioner Greeno,
No.
Chair Cowan.
Yes. Okay, we've already done.
Chair, and just to follow up on that, I think Commissioner Greenhouse's concerns are duly noted. And if an instance were to come up this year and a letter sent out, I fully anticipate that letter to be shared back with the commission. And if there are concerns generated from that letter, then we will address them at that time. But just want to make sure that I think we understand your concerns.
Thank you.
Thank you.
And if I could add also, so in other words, we can share our concerns like Commissioner Howard said, but in addition to that, we don't have to just approve this like once a year. So we can tweak these guidelines,
Yes.
you know, after some letters if we think that's appropriate.
Absolutely.
Absolutely.
I think keeping it an ongoing conversation.
Right.
It makes sure it works for, okay, great. Moving on to 6.5, discussion and possible action regarding a request for the authority allocated dumpster in support of the 2019.
Move to
Boom
approve.
Bash.
Second.
Got a motion and a second. Any public comment? Seeing none, can you please pull a vote?
Commissioner Neffa,
Yes.
Commissioner Inscore,
Yes.
Commissioner Howard,
Yes.
Commissioner Greeno,
Yes.
Chair Cowan.
Yes. Moving on to item 6.6, discussion possible action regarding development of an authority ordinance extending producer responsibility to provide household battery recycling opportunities at all stores that sell household batteries in Del Norte County.
Here in Del Norte County, we have among the most convenient all-household battery recycling programs in the country. Through a partnership with Call to Recycle, most places that sell batteries here in Del Norte County take them back for recycling. And so we are well positioned to potentially adopt a extended producer responsibility ordinance with respect to batteries, essentially requiring if you were going to sell batteries, you need to be able to take them back for recycling by participating in this program. The program already exists, and we already have participants, and essentially it works like this. Customers bring in their bag of batteries with one end taped. The retailer takes them, they put them in a box. When the box fills up, they mail it off. Call to Recycle mails them another empty box. And then customers come in and they fill it up with batteries. So that's the whole program. And this is paid through Call to Recycle. But the idea would be that we'd be taking a step further and actually saying, if you're going to sell batteries, then you need to take them back. And if you can't take them back, then you need to not sell them. And I understand that that's a big leap from how things are going currently. But we do have a problem with batteries in that currently there are there's more confusion about what a battery is and how to manage that battery. And specifically, I'm concerned about lithium-ion batteries. When you short a lithium-ion battery, it has such a high discharge of current that it creates heat and can cause fires. And my concern is that we have a battery recycling program, and I really don't want to have any fire hazards. But with this confusion of what kind of chemistries of batteries are out there, it is an ongoing concern. So if the board, again, this is just direction to work on developing the ordinance, and we would be doing this, drafting it with California Product Stewardship Council, but that would come back to the board for review and possible consideration or approval. And then it would also have to be separately approved by the city and the county. So it's a longer process, but before we started down this path, I thought I would ask for board direction. Do you want us to try to develop such an ordinance?
Any questions, comments? Commissioner Napa?
Yeah, I mean, I think that I'm fine with developing something like that. I was going to note, in addition to that, where you have the list of locations in the county, there's 5 that I could think of that should be on there, and I don't know if they've been approached or not. So one of them, of course, being Walmart, and then another one would be Verizon, and then the other 2 drugstores, meaning Rite Aid and CVS, and then also the Tractor Supply Company.
We'd be happy to, we will approach everybody who sells batteries through this
Okay.
process if this is the direction the board gives us.
Okay,
And some of those were participating stores earlier, so.
okay.
Commissioner Howard?
I'm not sure what kind of problem it is, but when one of my previous employers participated in the program and became one of these areas back during the original campaign, I noticed that a lot of batteries came in that weren't taped. Why do we tape them?
It's an excellent question, and I would love to be able to get rid of the taping. For alkaline batteries do not need to be taped. Those are the copper top batteries, the single-use batteries that are not rechargeable. But the problem is, most people can't reliably be confident that they know what an alkaline battery is and what it isn't. And like I said, we have single-use lithium-ion batteries, and those are a big hazard. So if one isn't sure what kind of battery chemistry you have, all of them have to be taped. The only time that we can avoid taping any batteries is if situations like a fire department that's regularly using walkie-talkies, they go through a lot of alkaline batteries and they have a big bucket of nothing but alkaline batteries. For them, you can take all the alkaline batteries and they don't have to be taped. But as soon as we start having anybody who is a little confused, isn't quite sure what a nickel metal hydride is versus a nickel cadmium versus a mercury battery, any confusion at all, they all need to be taped. And so that's our message to the public, because we can't have a fire hazard as part of our recycling programs. So we ask everybody to tape one end of the batteries before they bring them in for recycling, but there is no charge for the battery recycling program.
Yeah, I noticed that it's been prohibitive to participation in the program potentially, but I think those that participate will still bring in batteries without the tape to drop them off. So I don't know how that gets policed or not. I think the program's great, but there's that little hang up in there that I think is going to be problematic again.
And if we already have a voluntary program, I don't see why we have to actually have an ordinance in place. It just doesn't make any sense to me. If people are already doing it, why do we have to come in and...
Well, because only half of them are doing
Yeah,
it.
they're not all doing it.
And of the half that are doing it, the half that aren't represent probably a larger portion of the battery sales.
Have we talked to these people?
We have in the past, but again, if they're given a choice, participate or no, you can sell batteries either way, then some of them are saying no. We'll continue to sell the batteries and make the money off the batteries, thank you very much. But in terms of actually taking responsibility for that which we sell, you know, that's an expense. Some stores have that opinion. And so why would we need an ordinance? What's the advantage of that? Well, that's part of how we got our carpet recycling program, for example. There's a statewide Carpet America recycling effort, and that was created in part because other jurisdictions had adopted ordinances saying you have to do it. Same thing with mattresses. And so it's part of the strategy about how we roll out these statewide recycling programs is essentially there are local jurisdictions who have said, you have to. And so that's how, for instance, we've recently had a bill passed regarding proper management of sharps and pharmaceuticals. Big problems with the opioid epidemic, and surprisingly, the sharps and pharmaceutical manufacturers were not very interested in paying for that program. But because some local jurisdictions adopted ordinances saying, this is a need for our community, this is part of how we need to keep our community healthy and safe. And so it's necessary for us to have a safe place to dispose of sharps, a safe place to dispose of pharmaceuticals. This is the same kind of thing. We're saying batteries are a hazardous product. They have real hazards associated with them, including fire hazards. They have caused fires in recycling centers and in solid waste facilities. And by putting additional requirements on the people who sell them, we can highlight those hazards and hopefully have a safer overall program. That's the intent.
Have there been any instances in Del Norte County where you know that it was caused by a fire?
No.
Or caused by a battery?
I am not aware of an instance where a fire has been caused by a battery of a large facility, certainly not a solid waste facility. However, I am aware, talking to the pawn shop, there are several instances where they have received computers that have been deformed significantly because the lithium-ion battery melted down. So is it a real issue? Yes, it absolutely is a real issue.
Mr. Ward, would it be possible for staff to reach out to our battery retailers and make an attempt to say, there's a program, currently it does not appear that you're participating. We would like to encourage you to participate. We're hoping to get voluntary participation with all of our retailers, with the understanding that if we cannot, the Solid Waste Management Authority may be looking at putting this into a codified ordinance to address this issue. If you came back to us in 3 months and we're at 19 out of 23, we may discover that voluntary participation with a little bit of encouragement might save us some work from an ordinance standpoint. Or if all of them tell us to go pound sand, then maybe we've understood that they don't have any intentions of trying to be responsible for the product they sell. Just a thought.
Sounds like a good suggestion. I'd be happy to do that if that's what the board would like.
What is the consensus of the board? Do you want to try to?
I agree with Blake's idea.
I think it's preferable to allow people the option to do the right thing.
Let's do that. And we'll revisit
Would the board
this
like to
in
see
that
that letter
case.
before it goes out?
I'm good. I don't need to see it.
I don't need to
So
see it
we
either.
can can send that and start that process rolling. All right.
Very good.
Skull and crossbones.
So I'll take that as direction to reach out to the current folks who are selling batteries, but I'm not getting direction to develop the ordinance at this point. Is that correct?
That is correct.
Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you very much for your time on this. And that will conclude our meeting today. We're going to adjourn, I can't even talk, until Tuesday, March 19th at 4 p.m. Thank you.
And before we do that, I was mentioning to Mr. Ward ahead of time, my schedule is, looks like it's going to be changing where Tuesdays aren't going to be very good because I'll be in Humboldt and then I have to come back to Humboldt the following day on Wednesday. So I was thinking if it's possible to have it on Thursdays at 4 o'clock, if it works for everyone's schedule. If not, then I'll make the trip back and forth. For the next meeting, but I think that'll be for the foreseeable future.
The third Thursday of the month? Is that what you're looking for?
Yeah, and any Thursday works for me. Any Thursday in the month
The
would
third
work.
Thursday is a standing tri-agency meeting at this same time right now.
Okay.
I mean, it's at 3 p.m., so I think
that
having a
affects
4
two
p.m.
of them.
meeting is probably a challenge on that particular Thursday.
What about second Thursday?
It would work for if it didn't go long, tri-agency, but there's no guarantee that tri-agency.
Well, I mean, my guess is it with tri-agency, if we allocated, if we allocated an hour and a half, I don't know that we've had a tri-agency meeting that has gone longer than that, but I would think that
In the future, we could.
we could. You know, and I don't know how anybody feels about going later, of having this, I'm getting head shaking, so. Okay.
No, I don't, yeah, no.
No, I
already have a couple committees that are evening meetings. I don't want to have too many of my nights taken up. Wednesdays look good. The second, what about the second Thursday of the month? Would that, I mean, if you're at the third Thursday, does the second Thursday work for you guys?
I'm just looking at my calendar, and it doesn't look like I have anything as a regular scheduled meeting on the second Thursday.
And I know I don't. What about Commissioner Howard and Commissioner Greenow? Second Thursdays? I know next month does not work, next month, but after that?
March is fine. I have conflicts in May and April.
okay, what about the third Wednesday? Our Wednesday is good.
Yeah, actually, Thursday would be the day that would work best.
Okay.
Otherwise, I have to go back and forth.
Well, in the near future, Mr. Howard, what do you think about trying after the tri-agency? I don't see us.
I don't see us having an issue this year.
I think that we can schedule for 4.
4 o'clock.
I think we can give that a shot. We can certainly try that for March. So.
I just changed my agenda review to reflect this meeting for next year.
Well, you know,
and
that's
give
why
it me.
that's why you have computers. You just click, 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 click. It's all fixed. It's the world we live in now.
So we're looking at the third Thursday
Yes.
of the month, and you guys will make it work. At 3 o'clock or at
No,
4
no, no,
o'clock?
not at the meetings. Tri-agency's at 3.
Okay, so third Thursday of the month.
Can we
which would-
say 4:30?
Works for me.
Works for me, too.
4:15? I mean, this is American Pickers. We got to go back and forth here until we get it.
Okay. So that would make our next meeting, assuming that we can secure the room, March 21?
March 21st at 4:30.
Not 4, 4:30.
Yeah.
Fine for me.
Consensus? I'm just looking down the
Yes,
road. Does it
yes,
work for
that's
you?
good.
Does it work for you? Does it work for you?
I'm really confident that in March
Commissioner
that
Greenow, does
we
the-
can.
Tuesdays really
we
work
can
best
do it
for
at
me.
4.
We can do it at 4.
But we can
I think we can
do
do it at 4.
Thursday, I guess, at 4 is fine.
So third Thursday of every month
Let's go 4.
at 4 o'clock.
Yes.
Let's do 4.
But where's your tri-agency meeting? Right
Right
here?
here.
So we're going to know if you guys can't, and it's.
Well, yeah, it'd be really obvious if we're.
Still
Or
here.
Mr. Howard and I will still just be sitting here. We won't have to
And we'll
get
just
up.
come up and just push whoever else out of the way.
We'll just-
Sorry,
yeah.
we're here.
Well, 3 of us will already be here at that time, because Mr. Greenow is on tri-agency as well.
Okay.
So that really works out well for our schedule.
I am so glad that I could accommodate you.
Well, thank you. Thank you.
accommodating.
We are. So, Mr. Ward, would that be all right with you?
Yeah. I will try to secure the room.
Here, is that okay with you? All right, good. Well,
Gentlemen,
think we get
does it work for you if we switch it from Tuesdays to Thursdays? Doesn't it interfere with poker night or anything like that? Okay.
My only concern is it's in the middle of my work week. On Tuesdays,
But you're already here for tri-agency.
yeah, that's true.
You're not going anywhere. You're here. It works.
All right.
Okay,
Okay.
thank you, everybody. Appreciate it.
We're going to adjourn till March 21st at 4:30. 4 o'clock. 4 o'clock. Okay, 4 o'clock. Perfect. Great. Thank
okay,
you.
Thank you.